Now, the latest ITV News Central with Matt Teal and Samina Ali Khan.
Hello, welcome to Friday's programme. Coming up this evening, Midland soldiers who served in Afghanistan are honoured at a special service at St Paul's.
Relief for commuters as round-the-clock repairs after a landslip on a rail line are completed early.
Hundreds are to benefit as a transport company becomes the first to commit to the living wage.
And could Rianne really become the first female world snooker champion?
Good evening. A special service has been held to mark the end of UK military operations in Afghanistan. 453 British personnel died in the 13-year fight against the Taliban.
Among those remembered today were Lance Corporal Oliver Thomas from Hereford and Flight Lieutenant Rakesh Chauhan. They died alongside 3 other servicemen when their helicopter crashed in Afghanistan last year. Our reporter Lauren Hall was at today's service.
Arriving at St Paul's Cathedral to honour those who served in Afghanistan. The Queen and other royals were there to pay their respects at this service of commemoration, joined by those who served there, as well as the families of those who never came home.
Today is a moment for us to say thank you. Thank you to all who served, whatever your role.
There were prayers as well as hymns. A military cross from Camp Bastion was then carried through the cathedral, commemorating those who paid the ultimate sacrifice. 453 British servicemen and women were killed while serving in Afghanistan. Among them, Flight Lieutenant Rakesh Chauhan, who grew up in Birmingham. His father told us what it meant to be here today.
I think it's very important for all the families. I don't think it makes any less painful or any more bearable, but seeing events like this and being here certainly helps.
Many others were injured. Lance Corporal J.J. Chalmers was nearly killed in an explosion. He told us what today meant to him and his comrades.
This is a massive, massive day. I mean, it is a huge conflict. 13 years, it's half of my life has, that conflict has existed. And today, this marks the end of the conflict, but, the battle still continues for many people that have been affected by the war.
The service was followed by a parade, bringing together the Army, the Navy, the Marines and the Air Force. Then a flypast, with aircraft used during the military campaign. A symbolic reminder that while our involvement in the Afghanistan war is over, its legacy lives on through those who served and through the families of those who lost their lives. Lauren Hall, ITV News.
There's good news tonight for passengers who've suffered weeks of disrupted rail journeys after a huge landslip in Warwickshire. 350,000 tonnes of earth collapsed, closing the crucial line linking the Midlands with the Thames Valley and South Coast.
Work has been completed well ahead of schedule, and this morning the first commuters said goodbye to 45-minute detours on replacement buses. Wesley Smith joined them from Leamington Spa.
The next train to arrive at platform 3 is running ahead of schedule. 3 weeks ahead of schedule, after engineers worked around the clock to make the line safe between Leamington Spa and Banbury. For regular passengers, this day couldn't come soon enough.
I've got all luggage with me and everything. That was our concern, was lugging everything on and off buses, but we don't have to worry about that.
It's lovely to be back on a simple journey, yeah.
It's great. It's been really very disruptive over the last, I'm not sure how long it is now, but it seems like an awful long time.
The landslip near Harbury Tunnel in Warwickshire was massive, and so was the repair job, seen here taking shape over 6 weeks. 350,000 tonnes of earth along the track, which is normally used by up to 130 trains a day, both passenger and freight.
It's been a massive task. To move 350,000 tonnes of material in 6 weeks has been a fantastic effort by the whole site team, and fantastic support as well from the local community in helping us do that. We've opened up 3 weeks ahead of schedule, mainly by thinking outside the box. So we've used a lot of open cast coal mining techniques. It's much more secure than it's ever been before. The whole fact we've moved 1/3 tonnes of material in itself just makes it so much safer.
Well, it may have felt like a long few weeks for the passengers who use the service regularly. And as a goodwill gesture today, the train company is giving free tea and coffee. But it may take more than free drinks to encourage passengers back onto both Chiltern Railways and cross-country. Chiltern have already reduced fares to compensate the 10,000 passengers a day who have had to make a 45-minute detour each way by bus. The company must now work out how they're going to recoup lost revenue.
We've had to meet all the costs, but we will be negotiating with Network Rail in due course to reach a settlement. But to be honest, at the moment we've been focusing on running the trains and looking after our customers. It's not been an easy 6 weeks. We've done everything we can to make it as easy as possible, but my big thanks to our passengers, also to Network Rail for speeding up the works, doing such a good job working around the clock, and last but certainly not least, a big thank you to my staff and my frontline staff who've done such a good job, particularly at Leamington Spa and Banbury.
Although services are back on track, there were some delays because of signalling problems at Birmingham New Street this morning. Specialist teams will remain at Harbury for several months. They'll be ensuring the area stays more stable now than it has been at any time in its 150-year history. Relief all round that the service has been restored well in time for the Easter holidays. Wesley Smith, ITV News, Leamington Spa.
One of the region's biggest private sector employers has announced it will boost the pay of its lowest earners from next year. National Express West Midlands has committed to paying its staff, agency workers and those working through contracts the living wage.
Campaign groups say it's the minimum pay needed for people to afford a normal life. But unions say tens of thousands of low-paid workers across the region are still struggling and more firms need to follow suit. Chris Halpin reports.
Eileen and Anthony are two people who help keep the Midlands moving. Both work for National Express West Midlands at the bottom end of the payroll. But today they found out their wages are on the up.
I'm a really bad saver, so it would give me the extra bit of money to put to one side. Make my girlfriend happy at the same time because we're saving to move into a new place together.
I've got 3 grandchildren and another one on the way in the summer. And it'd be nice to put all the money aside for them in the future if we want to.
It's a big bus company and also a big employer, the region's largest in the private sector. And now it's the biggest here to offer not only its workers, but the agency and contract staff it works with, the living wage. When the minimum wage was first introduced in 1999, it was £3.60 per hour. 16 years on, it's now £6.50 per hour, but those campaigning for the living wage say that's not enough and it should be £7.85 per hour, and that's the minimum amount National Express have agreed to pay its staff from next year.
Some people might ask why it has to be 2016 and why it couldn't be introduced straight away.
Yes, well obviously something like that takes quite a lot of planning on our behalf. It's not as simple as just pressing a button tomorrow. We've got over 350 staff affected by this, which is tremendous. There's quite a lot of process to go through. I see it as an investment. Some companies may see it as a cost. And I think for us it's about recruiting the right people, retaining the right people and caring for our people.
That's a route the unions are happy with. But they want more private sector firms travelling in the same direction.
This clearly is an indication that no matter what sector you're in, the time is right for the living wage and they should implement it. In the city of Birmingham, there are parts of this city where over 50% of the employees in places like Northfield are getting less than the living wage.
Latest figures suggest nearly 500,000 people are in the same position, struggling with their income, not earning enough to lead a normal life. And as National Express joins the 48 other employers across the West Midlands signed up to pay more than the minimum wage, it's now for other firms in the private sector to decide if they too can make the living wage pay. Chris Halpin, ITV News, Birmingham.
You're watching ITV News Central. Still to come on the programme this evening, the 10 times ladies world snooker champion who's been invited to take on the men.
And after a great week at Cheltenham, AP McCoy prepares to ride in the Midlands Grand National. Almost 180,000 children in the West Midlands are living in families with energy debts, and the Big Six suppliers are not following their legal obligations to help them. That's the key findings of a new report by the Children's Society.
Its Show Some Warmth campaign says energy companies are failing to assess how much families can realistically afford to repay, and often make it difficult for them to complain. Andy Bevan reports from E.ON's headquarters in Coventry.
A final notice, but to the energy companies, not from them. This message is being delivered to each of the Big Six suppliers by the Children's Society, which fights child poverty and neglect. The charity says the companies are failing huge numbers of families struggling with energy debt, causing parents to feel intimidated and their children's health to deteriorate. Every few weeks, single mum Latasha Shaban picks up the post from the ground floor rented flat that, up until 2 months ago, was home to her and her 3 young children. They were here for 4 years, but they weren't happy ones. Damp problems in almost every room eventually turned into mould, and despite attempts by her landlord to get rid of it, the black growth persisted. Latasha's children began to suffer.
They ended up having asthma. There was constant chest infections, skin problems.
Latasha originally got her gas and electricity from British Gas, and in an effort to combat the damp, she was spending about £40 a week, mostly on heating, using a prepayment card. But after a doorstep sales agent persuaded Latasha to switch to E.ON, those energy costs and her stress levels increased dramatically.
My bills are going up to between 2 and 3 times more. Like, the energy usage was considerably high. The gas, sometimes it could be between £40 and £60 a week, and the same with electric. Sometimes I was having to lend money to keep putting into the meter because a tenner would go in a day. Whenever I phone them, it's normally between a 10-20 minute wait, or sometimes it could even be longer. And then when I'm speaking to them, they haven't got the right attitude. It's like they're not sympathetic.
According to the Children's Society, Latasha's experience is shared in varying degrees by many customers of all the Big Six energy companies. The charity says that in the West Midlands, 100,000 families have been in energy debt at some point, with 177,000 children affected by the problem. Those youngsters are 3 times more likely to have damp or mould in their home, and 4 in 10 of them said their bedroom was too cold to sleep in at night.
The Children's Society is calling on all energy companies to follow their legal obligations, to work with, not against, these families and make sure there are affordable, decent solutions to repaying their debts, and to treat families with children as vulnerable customers so that no child grows up in a cold home because their parents are trapped in energy debts.
E.ON told ITV News that they don't agree with some of the criticisms in the Children's Society report, and that they have teams across their business dedicated to providing support to those vulnerable families who get into debt. They also suggested that Latasha should get in touch with them again to discuss her account. Latasha has now been rehoused by her local council. Her children's health has improved and her energy bills are back to normal.
I've switched back to my old energy supplier, which is saving me between £50 and £60 per week. So it's saving me money, and we're just all happier and warmer.
Latasha's tale has a happy ending, but the Children's Society is hoping its Show Some Warmth campaign will remind the energy companies that there ought to be more stories like hers. Andy Bevan, ITV News.
Well, we heard from E.ON in Andy's report there. We've contacted the other 5 of the Big Six. EDF told us it's looking for ways to support vulnerable customers and is in discussion with the Children's Society. And SSE says it's allocating around £50 million to help low-income households with their energy costs.
Energy UK, which represents energy suppliers, says a number of systems are in place to protect the most vulnerable, including the safety net so people don't get cut off and the home heat helpline for anyone who's struggling. But the question is, are they working? Well, earlier I spoke to Matthew Reid from the Children's Society.
Well, any initiative to help families who are struggling with energy debt are better than nothing. But what our research has shown is that 4 out of 10 families who are struggling to pay down their debts are saying that the energy companies are not allowing them to negotiate how they pay back their debt, and that's having a huge detrimental impact on children's lives. So the evidence suggests that no, families across the West Midlands are not getting the support they need to be able to deal with their energy debt.
So given those statistics, what do you actually want the energy companies to do?
Well, we think it's really important that first of all we acknowledge the detrimental impact this is having on children's lives. To do something about that, we need families with children to be recognised as a vulnerable group, for energy companies to fulfil their legal obligations to make sure that the debt is payable back in an affordable and manageable fashion. For example, paid back in the summer so that people can still heat their houses in the winter, and ensuring that children, the needs of children, are taken into account when companies look at how they're going to look at energy debt.
In this particular report that we saw, the mother actually switched energy companies and didn't realise that her bills would be so high. Is the onus on her to ensure that she gets the best deal, or is it on the energy companies to make sure that their customers know what they are going to be paying?
Of course, families should do everything they can do to negotiate with the companies to make sure their debt is paid down, and companies have a legal obligation to make sure this actually happens. Now, if people can't make that work, of course they might look at other companies, or of course go for independent advice from people like the Citizens Advice Bureau. But whatever way, children shouldn't be left in this vulnerable situation. We must be able as a society be able to find a way in which all children can live in a warm home, a home that's not damp, and don't have to pay the price for energy debt.
That's Matthew Reid speaking to us a little earlier on.
Now, this week on the programme, we've been reporting on the soldiers from the Midlands who are in the Cypriot capital Nicosia as part of the team patrolling the Green Line there.
Yes, the unit is made up of both regular members of the Army and reservists. But as David Wood found out, there's also an extra special four-legged recruit.
Hello, Dobbs. Hi, Dobbs. Believe it or not, the British Army here in Nicosia actually consider this Cypriot ram a serving soldier. Coming out. Private Darby has his own service number and is even allowed to live at the commanding officer's house. To many this will seem a little strange, but having a traditional mascot on operations is serious business for the Mercian Regiment.
He is a private soldier, like others, who just happens to have 4 legs and hoofs. The battalion first had a ram in 1858 in the siege of Kotar in India. They came across a ram there, they befriended it, and then he became a member of the ranks.
I think they're eucalyptus. There's none actually in the garden, so when I take him for a walk he always stops at the eucalyptus trees.
His normal rations, though, are made up of leftover veg from the officers' mess. And to keep the mascot tradition alive, when troops arrived in Cyprus, they recruited a ram, picked because he was the most boisterous and even acts more like a dog. He's adopted his fellow comrades as his flock. Is this not just a bit weird?
Well, some people may say so, but the British Army is pretty unique and it has these traditions that sometimes seem a bit strange. But once you get used to it, he's part of the family. As I patrol around the base with him, all the guys want to pet him, come and say hello to him.
Preparing for the end of tour medal parade, it's not only the soldiers like Tim who have to put on their finest uniforms. Private Darby has to dress to impress too. He is an attention-seeking animal, though, always looking for affection. Even a battle-hardened ram needs to know he's loved.
It's really nice to look after, really friendly, well-behaved. You come down and walk him a couple of times a day, feed him well, and he's a natural for going on parade and not let himself down yet.
In time-honoured tradition, whenever the Mercians are on parade, they expect a ram to lead them out. The only soldier allowed to chew on the parade square. On this UN tour in Cyprus, he gets a medal, presented by a top general who even salutes the ram, who's now being considered for promotion. David Wood, ITV News, Cyprus.
I'm still staggered. I was expecting a dog.
I was expecting a dog.
And along comes the ram,
Yeah, well,
called Private Darby.
Surprise is good. some
Yeah,
days.
now we are going to link that to sport. Well, we're not, but Steve is. Aren't
Well,
you,
because
Steve?
he's a Ram.
Yes.
He's called Private Derby, admittedly with an A, apparently. But, of course, Derby are the Rams. And they could do with a bit of luck at the moment because their results have taken a bit of a dive, considering they were top of the table. So bring him over here. They need him in Derby.
Seamless.
Right, now what have we got? We've got the big winner at Cheltenham. We ask if Walsall's trip to Wembley is the reason for their nosedive in the league. And I meet the only woman invited to take part in snooker's World Championship.
ITV Central Sports Report, sponsored by WeWantAnyCar.com, the Cash for Cars website.
We can only start with the event that has got everyone talking, the Cheltenham Festival, and more specifically today's Cheltenham Gold Cup. Those hoping for a victory for soon-to-retire Tony McCoy were disappointed. He finished 9th, having finally broken his Cheltenham winning duck yesterday. So victory went to Coney Green. Nico de Boinville guided the 7-1 chance to the front early on and did enough to hold on during the closing stages. Conegri is the first novice to win the Cheltenham Gold Cup since 1974. And for those who don't know what a novice is, it means a horse that hasn't won that type of race before the season started. So he's suddenly come into his own and is clearly going to make a lot of money.
Such a marquee event, one of those sporting events that everyone tunes in for, whether or not you're particularly into horse racing. The crowds there just
They've been fantastic. They've been record breaking. They've obviously had the whole place redeveloped to 63,000 on Tuesday, 61,000 yesterday, and they sold out today's event, which usually sells out, but they sold that out on March the 3rd. So things looking pretty good for Cheltenham.
The weather's helped, hasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And as Cheltenham finishes, another big event prepares to get underway, and having already won at Cheltenham, racing fans will get one of the last chances to see one of the sport's greatest ever jockeys in action when that man, AP McCoy, rides Catching On at Uttoxeter tomorrow. He's the favourite. This is how things were looking ahead of the Midlands Grand National earlier today. And after a successful week at Cheltenham, McCoy's decision to return to Uttoxeter is a big lift for the organisers, who are hoping for a great day's racing.
Well, as soon as we got the news that Tony McCoy was coming, we got loads of interest from fans and the media. He is an absolute living legend, and I don't think we'll see the like of him ever again. No one will achieve what Tony McCoy has achieved on a racecourse, so we're delighted to have him here. It'll be a bit sad when it's all over, but let's hope he can come out with the winner.
Rather more rain this morning, 17.5 millimetres than we were A, forecast or B, wanted. It's going to ease the ground. But with luck it's going to be dry overnight and dry again tomorrow. Some horses will relish the ground, others may not like it as much, but it'll still be a cracking race, and let's hope AP McCoy can win it.
Football and Walsall are just a week away from their first trip to Wembley in their 127-year history. And this week the Johnston's Paint Trophy was taken to the Bank Stadium, where fans could have their picture taken with it. Manager Dean Smith was also there, but with just one win in their last 6 in the league. I wanted to know if the Wembley final is proving to be a dangerous distraction ahead of the visit of MK Dons.
There's been a lot of euphoria with the Wembley trip, and I think it's only natural. We're trying to keep the players as focused as we can, but it is difficult. We're training today, working on MK Dons, and then we're here today talking about Wembley, so it is difficult, but they are professional and the lads are trying their hardest to go out every week and put in good performances.
And the Midlands is already home to the world snooker champion Mark Selby, who claimed the title last year, and I bet we could all name some others. Ronnie O'Sullivan, Stephen Hendry, Steve Davis among them, but they do all have one thing in common: they are of course men. And in a sport where physical strength is pretty much irrelevant, you might ask, where are the women? Well, this year just one has been invited for qualifying in the sport's biggest event, and she too is a Midlander.
Snooker's greatest prize. Mark Selby, the jester from Leicester, reached the pinnacle of his sport last year, beating Ronnie O'Sullivan to claim the World Championship title. 2 men at the top in a man's world, but maybe that is about to change. This is King's Winford Snooker Centre near Dudley. It's going under a bit of a makeover. But in a quiet room out the back, Rhianne Evans is busy practising. And with good reason. The 10 times ladies world champion has been invited to take on the men in their world championships.
When I got the invite, I was ecstatic, saying yes, I will accept straight away. But obviously then you got the added pressure. I'm the only lady playing in the event, and people think I'm good enough, but I think I've got the ability. On the day you never know, so I just hope that on the day I'll play my best game and give myself a good shot.
For Rhianne, it's a highlight of a long amateur career in the sport. Her love for snooker, and indeed her talent, so often in danger of being wasted because, unlike the men's game, there is little financial reward for women, which makes competing a huge financial challenge. Maybe her rising status could change that. She has attracted sponsors and a professional coach, but even with that backing, she's under no illusions as to what is in store.
It's going to be hard for everyone involved, not just for me. It is a very tough game, and the ability throughout the whole level of the tour is amazing. So it's going to be hard, but obviously you just want to get that one win under your belt, give you that bit of confidence, and just give yourself the best shot in getting that win. Like, make sure you prepare properly, practice and everything like that. So I'm going out there trying to play my best game, and hopefully on the day it's good enough and I can get through.
Getting a woman into qualifying is a step in the right direction, but snooker is still far from equal. When Rianne won her 9th Ladies World Championship title, she received £450. That same year, Ronnie O'Sullivan won and pocketed £250,000. If Rianne wins just one qualifying match next month, she'll receive £6,000. Far more than any grand final victory in the women's game. Of course, if the 29-year-old pots the winning black at the Crucible in the final, she'll never have to worry about money again. Good luck to Rianne, really nice woman. Just to briefly mention, Tony Pulis, Manager of the Month for February. You may think it's a bit weird, they've just lost twice to Villa, but those happened in March. February was a great month, undefeated, and I'm sure they'll be hoping he picks up again against his old club Stoke.
OK, Steve, thank you very much.
Now let's get the weather forecast with the details. Here's Joe.
What's in store for today? ITV Local Weather, sponsored by Centre Parks.
Hello there, and spring is here in the words of Di Simpson, and what a lovely spring it's going to be based on this wonderful picture. Central Weather at ITV.com is the address if you've got any pictures you want to show off. Now, over the next few days, it is going to be getting much cooler. The reason for that, we've got high pressure building in the northeastern parts of the continent, pushing that cold air down towards us, which means it is going to be much cooler over the weekend. Tonight, first of all, then, those temperatures are going to plummet all the way down, as low as -1 degree in the Staffordshire area, which means we could expect a touch of ground frost in places. Now, those temperatures aren't going to pick up much as we head into the morning. Sunny spells in places, dry with some very thick clouds, but temperatures only as high as 3 degrees Celsius, and it won't be getting much warmer as we head into the afternoon. Dry with some sunny spells in places, but much cooler day.
ITV Local Weather, sponsored by Centre Parks.
Just time for a quick reminder of tonight's top stories on ITV News Central before we go this evening. A special service has been held to mark the end of UK military operations in Afghanistan. 453 British personnel died in the 13-year fight against the Taliban. Among those remembered today were Lance Corporal Oliver Thomas from Hereford and Flight Lieutenant Rakesh Chauhan.
A major rail line between Birmingham and London has reopened 3 weeks earlier than expected. The line between Leamington Spa and Banbury has been closed since the end of January after a 350,000-tonne landslip at Harbury.
And just a quick reminder, there's plenty more from us on the website, including the miracle triplets from Birmingham born 2 years apart. The usual address.
And that's it from the team here. Have a lovely weekend and don't forget Mother's Day on Sunday. From us, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.